which meant the threat assessments were fundamentally flawed. Beneath the primary foundations of Ethelgard, where the Solaric hegemony kept its secrets and its failures, the air itself tasted of ozone-burned dust and the metallic tang of deep-crust humidity. Adept Kalo adjusted his oversized data stylus, his smaller, youthful hands trembling as he struggled to keep pace with Archduchess Vespera's predatory stride. Above them, the spires of the capital probably shimmered in the twin suns, but down here, the only light came from the flickering, amber hum of security fields. Kalo's sleeves were already damp, stained by the gray condensation that clung to the conduits like sweat on a fevered brow. The rhythmic, wet thrumming of a leaking hydroponic pipe echoed through the corridor, a steady, hypnotic beat that seemed to mock the frantic pace of the record-keeper's heart. Vespera did not notice the leak. She did not notice the smell of stale nutrient paste that permeated the sublevels. She was a creature of silk and genetic hubris, her gaze fixed only on the row of containment units where the Solaric hegemony housed its livestock for the Zenith trials. To her, this was a shopping trip for the upcoming festivities, a search for a creature capable of providing 5 minutes of entertainment before being crushed for the crowds. They stopped before Unit 0. Tap, tap. The sound of a human finger against the cold durasteel bars of the isolation cell was so quiet Kalo almost missed it. Inside the darkness, Silas Vane sat on a stone bench, his posture so still he might have been carved from the very rock of the planet. He did not look like the apex predators in the adjacent units. He had no chitinous plates, no secondary mandibles, and no venom-dripping stingers. He was soft-skinned, his frame lean and deceptively unassuming beneath the tattered remnants of a gray flight suit. Vespera leaned against the bars, her lip curling in a display of calculated boredom that failed to hide the predatory glint in her eyes. She spoke of the Zenith trials as if they were a gift, a chance for the human to die with a semblance of purpose. She mocked the stillness of his hands, calling it the paralysis of a species that knew its place in the galactic food chain. Silas Vane did not answer. He simply looked up, his gaze meeting hers with an unsettling, unnatural calm that made the fine cilia on Kalo's neck stand straight. And then, it happened. A slight, almost imperceptible twitch of the human's lip. The ghost smile was gone in a fraction of a second, leaving Silas's face a mask of stone once more, but the Archduchess had seen it. She laughed, a sharp, jarring sound that echoed off the damp walls, interpreting the gesture as a tremor of suppressed terror. She didn't see the way his pupils remained dilated, or the way his breathing didn't accelerate by a single hertz. She saw only a creature realizing its own insignificance. What happened next? I wish I could say the warning ended there. Stay close, because some truths, once seen, can never be buried again. Kalo's tablet chirped, a priority notification bypassing his security clearance. He glanced down, his secondary respiratory vents locking tight as he processed the data packet. It was a fragment of a shadow protocol, an encrypted file labeled Protocol 0. Beside him, in the next unit over, a veteran Korgan myrmidon named Grash, a creature that had survived 3 previous trials, suddenly backed into the furthest corner of his cell. The massive warrior's 3 hearts were visible, thudding against his ribcage with such violent force that the sound was audible in the narrow hall. Grash wasn't looking at the Archduchess. He was looking at Silas Vane. The Korgan's massive, clawed hands began to shake, and a low, guttural whine escaped his throat. Kalo watched, confused, as the veteran warrior's skin turned a sickly, translucent gray. Before the adept could log the observation, the Korgan's primary heart gave a final, desperate surge and then stopped. The warrior slumped to the floor, dead of sheer, terror-induced failure before the trials had even begun. Vespera merely waved a hand at the carcass, ordering the refuse to be cleared. She turned her attention back to Silas, her voice dripping with the casual cruelty of an empire that had forgotten the taste of its own blood. She sentenced him to the full 7-day gauntlet, promising that by the time he reached the crucible, he would be begging for the iron Ouroboros to end his existence. The human finally stood. He moved with a terrifying kinetic efficiency, a lack of wasted motion that suggested every twitch of a muscle was part of a pre-calculated path. He didn't look like a man fighting for his life. He moved like a god balancing the books. As the security team moved in to transfer him to the arena shuttles, Silas Vane looked directly at Kalo. Silence. In that look, the young adept didn't see fear. He saw a man who had already seen the end of the story. He saw the Ghost Ember. The Hegemony High Command had identified this man as a legendary Black Ops assassin thought dead for 15 years, but Vespera had ignored the warnings in her obsession with the spectacle. Kalo felt a chill that had nothing to do with the dampness of the sublevels. The Hegemony had forgotten what happens when you turn a species of survivors into a species of reapers. Kalo watched the arena feed through the hairline fracture on his tablet screen, the jagged line splitting the holographic image of the human in two. The culling was intended to be a slaughter, a spectacle to cleanse the palate before the main events. A massive chitin stalker, a beast of biological nightmares with translucent armor and serrated limbs, was released into the red sand. The crowd's roar was a physical weight, a wall of sound that made the air in the observation booth vibrate. Beneath that noise, Kalo could still smell the sharp, acidic scent of the sanitizer he had used on his hands, a clinical odor that felt absurdly out of place amidst the brewing carnage. Silas Vane did not run. He did not even adopt a defensive posture. He stood in the center of the pit with a terrifying, absolute stillness, his eyes tracking the stalker's center of mass with a machine's precision. When the beast lunged, Silas didn't dodge so much as he ceased to be where the claws fell. It was the kinetic efficiency the records mentioned, a total absence of wasted motion that suggested every nerve in his body was a conduit for a single, lethal purpose. In one fluid, blurred motion, he drove a scavenged shard of metal into the beast's primary neural cluster. The stalker collapsed, its massive weight sliding into the dust without a single cry. The arena went silent. Archduchess Vespera leaned forward, her knuckles white as they gripped the gilded observation railing. Kalo's tablet pinged again, the decryption of the Shadow Protocol hitting 90%. The Ghost Ember wasn't just a designation for a man, but a designation for the end of an era. Desperate to reclaim the narrative of Solaric dominance, the Archduchess accelerated the schedule to the breaking point. She bypassed the intermediate rounds and triggered the Crucible, a terminal event designed to be unwinnable. 200 elite Korgan Myrmidons, the iron fist of the Solaric hegemony, descended into the pit in perfect, interlocking formations. Silas stood alone, holding a dead detonator he had salvaged from the stalker's containment collar, staring at the High Command as if they were already ghosts. Or perhaps the records were deliberately scrubbed, because as the first rank of Myrmidons closed in, the light died. Silas didn't just kill them. He moved through the darkness like a localized weather system of tempered steel and calculated vengeance, stripping the elite guards of their weapons and their lives with a speed that defied the biological limits of every species the hegemony had ever cataloged or conquered. The screams from the pit were short, precise, and horribly frequent. Between the pulse of the emergency strobes and the rhythmic, terrifyingly efficient sounds of metal meeting bone, the Archduchess realized that she hadn't just invited a prisoner to her games, but had effectively opened the doors of her own tomb for a ghost that had been waiting 15 years to collect its due. The encryption on Kalo's screen finally shattered, revealing the true nature of Protocol Zero. It wasn't an escape plan or a virus. It was a planetary broadcast, utilizing the arena's own high-gain neural links to hijack every comms relay in the hegemony. While Silas systematically dismantled the personal guard within the red-lit sanctum, every screen in the capital began to bleed the truth. The star maps of the genocides, the hidden ledgers of the livestock, trade, and the evidence of the systematic rot that built Ethelgard. Vespera sat in the center of her inner chamber, the iron Ouroboros on the mantle casting a long, thorned shadow across her face. Silas appeared in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the flickering fires of a city beginning to burn. He didn't raise a weapon. He didn't have to. The Empire was already screaming outside, its foundation dissolved by the very truth he had carried in his blood. He looked at her one last time, and for the first time, Kalo understood the look in the human's eyes. It wasn't malice or even triumph. It was the heavy, silent peace of a ledger finally being closed. Decades later, in a small schoolroom far from the ruins of Ethelgard, the woman once known as an archduchess opened a simple digital message. It contained no text, only a single image of a human girl standing in a sunlit field, wearing a pendant shaped like a thorn circle. The girl was smiling, not with the predatory hunger of the hegemony, but with the quiet, haunting peace of a debt fully paid. A single, golden leaf drifted onto the woman's desk,